Alrighty guys, good morning to you. We are live. Invite you to come join me for a spell. It is 13 minutes after 10 a.m. here in southern Ohio. It's sunny and beautiful outside on this Wednesday morning, the 15th day of May 2019. Come on, come on, come on. Going to look at a few verses of scripture again, part of our devotion. We missed Monday and didn't do a devotion on Monday, so we started up yesterday, and we were kind of going on looking at some acronyms and that I've heard in the past and I thought was interesting. Yesterday we talked about PUSH, P-U-S-H, push, pray until something happens. And today we're going to look at another acronym that has been very popular over the years, and this is actually one of the most popular. We'll be talking about the most popular acronym that in Christianity, maybe on Friday. But anyway, so let's get right into this, and there's an interesting story behind this. And I don't know if you guys heard about it or not, but surely you have. But the acronym is F.R.O.G. You know, ribbit, F.R.O.G. Dusty would love this one because she's scared to death of frogs. But anyway, and that's fully rely on God. And it was an interesting story behind this and how this had gotten started. There was a lady named Arlene B-E-E. And she had shared this story some years ago. And it says that Arlene was living in Florida when Hurricane Wilma tore through. It says the storm caused significant damage to her church, and they had to use the fellowship hall for services in Sunday school. She went on to write, one muggy afternoon, about 80 people crowded into the small hot room for class. And they sat side by side on folding chairs, and they were very hot and uncomfortable. But then the Sunday school teacher stepped up, and she asked how many knew what the letters F.R.O.G. stood for. And people started shouting out different answers, and Arlene was sitting there and just wondering where this teacher was going with this thought. So then the teacher had pointed heavenward, and perched on top of her index finger was a bright green little rubber frog with long legs and googly eyes. And she said, F.R.O.G. stands for fully rely on God. And she said, and that's what we need to do today as we're in our fellowship hall instead of our church, is to fully rely on God and trust that God will help rebuild the church. So Arlene had listened to the lesson, and she was very impressed with the delivery of this Sunday school teacher with this little rubber frog and the acronym to fully rely on God. And she felt impressed to send one to her son, because she thought, you know, this would be a great tool to witness for the Lord. So Arlene had sent a frog to her son, who had just moved his dental practice into a new location. And he was nervous and kind of unsure of the move, and said that one day that he got a package in the mail, and he opened it up, and there was this little green rubber frog. And there was a note beside it that said, F.R.O.G. fully rely on God. And he called his mother and told her that he received the package, and that he was really down and kind of questioning his decision to move his practice, but said, I received this little frog, and I decided to put my trust in God. Now, don't get me wrong, because I know there's going to be critics that say, oh, frogs don't have nothing to do with salvation, and you're right, it don't. But what the purpose of this today is, just that little tiny frog served as a reminder to fully rely on God. When you go through troubles and heartaches and situations, trust in God, fully rely on God. The story went on to say that Arlene had, over the rest of her days, had passed over 4,000 frogs. To teachers, to bus drivers, people in the supermarket. There was one story I read that said that she was at a gas station and the woman beside her looked like she was just downhearted and troubled, and she felt impressed to give her a little frog. So she reached in her pocket and pulled out a little rubber frog, and she said, I want to give you this. And attached to the rubber frog was a note that said, fully rely on God. And she said, I handed it to her, and she said, I turned to get into my car thinking that maybe, that maybe she shouldn't have done it because the woman didn't look like she was very impressed with the frog. And just as Arlene was ready to pull away, the woman went up to her window and she said, I want to thank you for sharing this. She said, I've had heartaches and troubles today and sad news. And she said, and I just needed a reminder to fully rely on God. Folks, listen, don't know why I'm crying over frogs, but the message can be simple. It don't have to be a great big thing that we do. Just the little things that we do for somebody. It might seem insignificant. Might be little, might be saying, why would I bother giving somebody a little rubber frog? But you know what? To that lady, it helped her immensely. It helped her to remind her to fully rely on God. And Arlene, she felt like this was a ministry, and she passed over 4,000 little frogs to people, reminding them to fully rely on God. What a ministry. A little frog with a great big message to fully rely on God. No matter what you go through, no matter what you're facing in your life. Arlene went on to pass, like I said, 4,000 of them to people all over where she lived. She moved from Florida to Virginia. She even met the governor and was able to give the governor of Virginia a little frog. She said she even had the privilege to meet the president and his family, and she gave a frog to the president and his family. It's amazing. It started out just with just a little Sunday school teacher having a little frog on the top of her index finger. But the message that she taught, that lesson that she taught, Arlene took it personal, and she spread the message of God. I want you to look at a few verses of Scripture. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. And then in Psalms 59, verse 9, it says, because of his strength will I wait upon thee, for God is my defense. Now I looked at that scripture, Psalms 59:9, and I read a different version of this because I always read out of the King James Version, and I was kind of reading this, and there's several different versions that's out there that I don't use, but I was just curious of what they said about this, and I found this verse, same verse, but it was worded a little differently in the NIV. And it says, you are my strength. I watch for you. You, God, are my fortress, my God on whom I can rely. And I looked up the word rely in the dictionary, and it simply says to depend upon with full trust or confidence. So see, we are instructed to fully rely on God. And to rely on God means to depend on with full trust or confidence. And that takes us right back to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. We can take the word trust and we can change it to rely. Rely on the Lord with all thine heart. It means the same thing, to trust and to rely with God, in God with all your heart. And lean not onto your own understanding. Lean not on your own opinions, on your own interpretations of situations in your life. But fully rely on God. Frog. So next time you see a frog, Dusty Lynn, she'll be running and she'll jump and take off running because she's scared to death. But next time you see a frog, fully rely on God. Because God will never leave us nor forsake us. He loves us and He'll provide. He'll take care of us. So it's just those little messages that we can share with somebody that can move mountains in their lives. Frog, fully rely on God. Listen, that's all I got for you today. Share this video if you don't mind. Lord willing, we'll be on tomorrow with another devotion, another acronym. So hopefully you are enjoying these. So listen, have a great day. Love you. God bless you.